Welcome to this explainer. It's kind of wild to think about, but just holding on to money can actually cost a business money. It sounds totally counterintuitive, right? But in the world of corporate finance, cash management is literally the ultimate balancing act. It's this constant, high-stakes tightrope walk between risk and return. Hold too little, and, well, you might not make payroll. But hold too much, and you're leaving serious growth and profit sitting right there on the table. So today, we're going to master this balancing act together.
Okay, so let's dive straight into the big question. How much cash is too much cash? If you picture a business as a massive engine, cash is the oil that keeps the whole thing from seizing up. But you wouldn't just drown an engine in oil, would you? When a business leaves massive amounts of idle cash sitting around in a vault or some low-yield checking account, that money is effectively shrinking because of inflation. And even more importantly, it isn't being put to work. It's not buying new equipment, hiring top talent, or earning interest. So, holding too much idle cash loses money, but holding too little, that puts the very survival of the business on the line.
Here's our roadmap for today. Number 1, the motives for holding cash. Number 2, objectives and functions. Number 3, forecasting and budgeting. Number 4, payables versus receivables. And finally, number 5, the optimal balance.
All right, part 1, motives for holding cash. Before we can optimize anything, we really need to understand the fundamental stakes here. Why hold on to cash at all? It's fascinating to look back at the legendary British economist Lord Keynes. He essentially boiled this down to 3 basic motives. First up, the transaction need. Think about it. The cash a business collects from sales almost never perfectly syncs up with what it pays out for raw materials or utilities. Because of that lag, you absolutely need a buffer just to keep the lights on day to day. Second is the speculative need. Having some cash on hand means a firm is armed and ready to pounce on sudden profit-making opportunities, like a random drop in raw material prices. And third, the precautionary need. The future is uncertain, right? Shipments get delayed. Massive unexpected bills pop up out of nowhere. This cash buffer protects the firm against those sudden shocks.
Moving on to part 2, objectives and core functions.
Let's look at the actual rules of the game. What are finance managers trying to pull off here? Well, we can split this into high-level objectives and daily functional actions. The major objectives are pretty straightforward. Ensure a steady supply of funds, pay the bills on time, and completely minimize any idle cash. But the core functions, that's the actual daily grind required to hit those goals. To ensure that steady supply, a manager has to mathematically estimate the required capital. To minimize idle cash, they're actively allocating and controlling those funds, meaning they are initiating investments the absolute second there's an excess, or they're rapidly shifting funds around to handle unexpected machinery breakdowns. It's a highly active role.
Now, why go through all this trouble? Because getting this right isn't just an academic exercise. It has incredible, tangible benefits. When you dial in your cash flow, you stop relying on incredibly expensive bank loans, which means you can fund rapid business expansion yourself. It also does wonders for your reputation. Consistently settling debts on time builds massive trust with suppliers and creditors. And honestly, let's not overlook the human element here. It dramatically minimizes management stress. When you know exactly where your cash is, you're not lying awake at 3 a.m. wondering if you're going to make payroll.
Which brings us to part 3, forecasting and budgeting.
Okay, so how do they actually peer into the future to maintain this balance? It all comes down to cash budgeting. Think of a cash budget as a company's ultimate early warning radar system. It predicts cash requirements over a specific time frame. By actively monitoring this budget, management can pinpoint the exact moment they'll have an excess of funds so they can plan short-term investments and earn a little extra profit. Or, conversely, it acts as a red alert system warning them of a dangerous cash shortage approaching. This gives them the crucial time needed to arrange an overdraft with the bank before a crisis actually hits.
So how do you build this radar system? You've basically got 3 main methods. While the adjusted net income and balance sheet methods are highly effective, complex accounting techniques, the first one on the list, the receipts and payments method, is essentially the gold standard. It's universally popular just because it's so direct. It literally lists every single expected cash inflow and outflow, completely ignoring non-cash items like depreciation. You simply take your opening balance, add your anticipated cash, deduct your expected payments, and boom, you have your precise closing balance. Next up, part 4, payables and receivables management.
This right here is the ultimate corporate tug-of-war. These are the real-world levers a manager pulls to manipulate the budget. On one side, you have payables management.
Your goal here is to carefully plan your outflows and basically negotiate the longest credit periods possible with your vendors. You want to safely hold on to your cash for as long as you can to fund your own operations. But on the exact opposite side, you have receivables management. This is the money your customers owe you. Here, you want the shortest credit periods possible so you can collect cash instantly and avoid bad debts. So you're constantly pulling cash in quickly while pushing your own payments out slowly.
And finally, part 5, finding the optimal balance. We know we need cash. We know we want to collect it fast and spend it slowly. But mathematically speaking, how do we solve this tension? How do we hold exactly the right amount? That brings us to the optimal cash balance. Think of it as a financial center of gravity. It is the precise level, just enough, neither too much nor too little. It depends entirely on managing that risk-return trade-off we talked about, and to figure out this exact mathematical point, financial economists have developed some pretty brilliant models. We're going to look at the 2 absolute most important ones right now.
Let's start with a framework developed by William Baumol. Now, Baumol assumed a world of perfect certainty, a scenario where a business knows its exact, precise cash needs. He actually took a famous inventory management concept, the economic ordering quantity, or EOQ, and cleverly applied it directly to cash. His entire model rests on minimizing 2 specific costs. First, carrying costs. This is the interest you are losing out on by holding physical cash instead of investing it. And second, transaction costs. These are the annoying brokerage fees you have to pay every single time you convert your securities into cash.
If you visualize how these costs interact, it's pretty amazing. Imagine a graph where your cash balance is increasing. As it goes up, your holding costs shoot straight up right alongside it because you are missing out on more and more potential interest. But at the same time, your transaction costs actually drop. Why? Because if you hold more cash, you don't have to sell your securities as often, which saves you a ton on those brokerage fees. If you combine these, you get a U-shaped total cost curve. And the optimal cash balance, it sits at the absolute lowest point of that U-curve. Amazingly, that is the exact mathematical spot where carrying costs and transaction costs perfectly intersect.
But let's be real for a second. The business world is really that perfectly predictable. What if your business doesn't operate under perfect certainty? Enter the Miller-Orr model, created by Merton Miller and Daniel Orr. They realized that for most actual businesses out there, cash flows are completely stochastic. That means they're unsteady, unpredictable, and fluctuating wildly from day to day. They needed a model that allowed for realistic flexibility, not just a rigid single target number.
Imagine a jagged, chaotic line tracking your daily cash balance as it bounces up and down over time. Instead of trying to force that chaos into a single optimal point, Miller and Orr established boundaries. At the very top, you have an upper limit. If the business's cash randomly hits this ceiling, it triggers an action. You have too much idle cash, so the manager immediately invests the excess to bring the balance back down to a safe, comfortable return point. On the flip side, if cash plummets and hits the lower limit, it triggers a different action. The manager sells off some securities to immediately replenish the cash, bumping it back up to that return point. It's a completely mechanized, responsive system for staying balanced in a totally unpredictable world.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I'll leave you with this. Cash management is absolutely not a guessing game. It's about strategy, rigorous forecasting, and precise execution. Whether you lean on the structured certainty of the Baumol model or you have to navigate the wild, volatile swings of the Miller-Orr framework, the tools are there to master this balancing act. The real question is your business walking the cash flow tightrope completely blindly, just rely on gut feelings, or are you operating mathematically to essentially guarantee your survival and growth? Take these frameworks and start balancing the scales today. Thanks for joining me.